back for class 7 for the video projection mapping intro to video and light-based installation. This is your instructor, Gene Felice, and we are going to start talking about Touch Designer. Touch Designer is a really powerful piece of software. You can use it for video mapping, but you can also use it to just generate all sorts of interesting 2D and 3D moving imagery. You can map 3D objects. You can do all sorts of things with it. You can even do a lot of like more advanced touch screens, system controls, and interactions, gaming, all sorts of fun stuff. It's just amazing how far Touch Designer can go. It can interact with a lot of coding languages, but can also just stand on its own. So we're just going to start off today on kind of like where to go to get Touch Designer and how to download it and install it and all that fun stuff, how to sign up for a free non-professional account, and then just how to get going with it. So today we're going to really review all of that. You're also going to have just kind of, like I said, an intro, a little basic intro. I've got some great resources on here that I'll show you. You can download other project files and learn from some videos. And then you've got a homework assignment to start, just, install Touch Designer and start kind of getting to know it and learning some of its environments. So first place you're going to want to go is you're going to go to the company derivative.ca. Derivative is the company that makes Touch Designer, okay? When you get here, you can go to Touch Designer and you can look at all sorts of things about its features, what it's capable of, all the different stuff that it can do with controlling projection. It just has all of these different sides to it, but we're going to really focus on its projection mapping side of it. If you click here, you can see some of the cool stuff that they've done with Touch Designer in the past, and just all of the elements that it can handle. But you're going to need to sign up for an account, so you need to go here and create a new account. You'll sign up. You can use your university email address, but you don't have to. It's not like an education account. You can do whatever one you want. And when you sign up, you're actually going to be able to authorize up to 10 machines for a year with it, which is really cool. So with one account, I was able to set up both my laptop and my home computer. So after you do all this, you'll be able to download it. It's a pretty good size file. It's around a gig. And then once you download it, so I'm not going to create a new account because I've already created one right here. But once you're in it, you can get it now here, and you can just go. You can actually grab it before you make the account. You can get the Windows download or the Mac download. There's some system requirements here as well. So non-commercial is just for personal use. If I was going to buy it for a lab, that's how much it would be for commercial. And then the Pro feature allows you to go slightly higher res. There are some limitations on the free version, like you can't go past a resolution of 1280 by 1280, which is just fine because all your Pico projectors are 1280 by 720 anyway. It's the 720p, so this should work out fine for all of you. So download it. It'll come down as a zip file. It actually doesn't have an installer. It's just one of those apps where you just drag it into your application folder afterwards. So I drug mine in here, and you'll see there it is, Touch Designer. That's the logo for it. And when you open it the first time, I'm going to go ahead and open it from my dock. Where is it there? There it is. So I have a file here, but I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm going to quit Touch Designer just so you can see what it looks like when it's opening up. Let's go ahead and do it here. The first time you open it up, it's going to ask you to log in with that same username and password that you created for your account. Once you do that, it'll license it and you'll be good to go. You don't have to actually copy the license number it gives you. And this is just kind of a default, this is always the default file that comes up here when Touch Designer opens the first time. Okay? All right, so download it, go to Derivative's website, and then sign up for a free account, create that new account, and then you'll be able to use that username and password, or your username, email, and password to then authorize it once it's downloaded and in your applications folder and you open it for the first time. Once that's all done, you'll see this and we'll all be on the same page, okay? So you might wonder, what the heck am I looking at right now? Well, right now you are looking at what's known as a network. So I'm just going to go ahead and move this out of the way and move this off to the side. And this is a network. So the way Touch Designer works is some of you might have heard of this before, but it's kind of like nodal-based programming. It's a visual interface. And each of these little objects in a lot of different software is known as a node. And you can kind of click on each one, and they have little inputs and outputs that allows you to connect them with these little virtual wires. They always go left to right. So you're always connecting like a wire, one into an output there. I just dragged, the same wire in there. And same thing here. Some can take more than one and have different inputs that can go into them. And then each of these have little controls that you can do up here in the top right. As I click on each one, you'll see a different kind of control panel shows up in the top right. So each one of these is a little bit different. This is a noise channel. I can actually play with like the amplitude. You can see how that changes this like wave pattern that's going on inside of my graphic and changing. This is an original movie that came in, which is just this little like jelly bean image. And I'm able to kind of play with the amplitude of the noise there, or the offset of that noise, the position of it, the roughness of that noise, the harmonics. There's all these different features depending on which of these nodes you're working with, right? And we're going to talk briefly about these. I don't want to overwhelm you with too much of it yet. But this movie file here, like I said, it's just a still image right now. Actually, I'm sorry. I think it is a movie image, or it's just the waving of it. But I can right-click this little plus symbol right here. If I click it, hides some of the controls around it. But if I right-click on it, I can bring up parameters. And you can actually see that this little file, it's the same thing. The parameters is what's up here as well, right? So whether you want to have a pop-up by right-clicking and bringing up parameters, or just, click on the actual node, and then you'll see the parameters here. So you can see here, if I click, this is asking me to load a file. These are some ones that just came with Touch Designer, some samples. So I could change this to any of these. These are still images. The banana, you're going to see a lot in there. There should be some movie files like the count movie file, all sorts of different fun stuff that's in here. But right now we just have a jelly bean GIF that we're working with, right? We'll work with movie files here in a little bit, but in case you were wondering where that came from, there it is with the TIFF right there. So I'll change to TIFF, and then we have transparent jelly beans because TIFFs have what's called alpha channel support in them. I got a little warning there. The resolution was limited, so just a little warning. That's why that little flag came up, because I think I brought something in that was bigger than the original 1280 by 1280. But anyway, you can bring things in with alpha channels, and I'm animating a still image right now. This has turned into this crazy kind of, I can move this three-dimensional cube around if I want to, and then that's sending it to an output as well, which is cool. And outputs we'll talk about in a little bit. But this is a network. This is a network of nodes that are connected with inputs and outputs. So that's an output coming out of the movie file going into the input of the displaced channel. And the displaced channel I can play around with. I can control the weight of this, the scale of it, all sorts of different things. So I'm like zooming into some of those components or zooming out. You're going to learn what all these different nodes can do. I can repeat, or I can mirror, or go to 0 or hold. I'll go back to mirror. There's all sorts of different stuff that can happen here. I can play with different channels, all these different things, right? So each one of these is a little bit different as we go. Let me open up the controls on that one. That one was shut off for a second. If you hit that little plus symbol, it kind of like locks it out. I can also zoom in and out. So I have the ability to, like, if I click and drag with my left mouse, I can drag this whole world around, right? But then I can also zoom in and out. Or I can use if I click my middle mouse button and then drag left and right, I can zoom in that way as well. So you can either use the scroller wheel to zoom in and out, or you can do that, right? And if I right-click on any of these at any point, I can drag a bounding box around all of them and then use my left to move them around. So you can kind of like reorient things however you want. So I can then, if I right-click off onto one of these, I also get some menus to pop, like viewing menus and things like that for each object. So whether I right-click on the little plus, it doesn't really matter. You can just right-click on any of these objects, get the parameters. You can delete. You can copy an object. Maybe I want to select this one and then just say copy it, and then come over here and paste it. And you'll see I just made a copy of the noise channel. I can always hit delete and get rid of it as well. So lots of ways to interact with these guys as we move forward. So if you hit H on your computer, While you have select, it will kind of just center up. That's the home button, and it'll let view everything in your scene in all one big scene, right? But if I hit Shift H with what I had selected, which was this one jelly bean, it zooms in on it, so you can just kind of see the details on it. If I hit that plus, it hides some of the little sidebars, or I can bring that back. Again, if I hit H, it comes back and lets me see everything. So if you kind of get lost in these networks, it's really easy to see that, okay? I can also, like I said, right-click inside some of these, like 3D. I can drag things around, or I can click in it with a left mouse and actually rotate a 3D object like that, which is cool. And we'll get into the more 3D geometry stuff down the road. Let's see. Next thing you're going to want to learn is basically how to bring up this main menu, this main add menu. There is stuff over here on the left, and this is more advanced elements. This is a palette of all sort of external tools. We're not going to start with these. We're going to start with the core components first. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and hit the X button on that and close that. For right now, we can always bring it back later. I can open the palette by just hitting that little button right there, which looks like a little arrow up. When I roll over it, that button comes up, right? So whichever one, you can hit the X, or you can just close that for right now. And there's shortcuts up here that will take you to online tutorials, the derivative forum, their wiki, all sorts of things, and frame rate. We'll get to all this stuff down the road. So right off the bat, if I double click in the black space, I pull up what's called this OP create dialog. It's really like, just think of it as your main menu for all the core components inside of Touch Designer, okay? So I did that, or I can hit the tab key on my keyboard and that will bring this up as well. And this is where you're going to learn about the 6 families of operators inside of Touch Designer. And these are operators, they call them operators, but basically they can operate on images, motion, like video-based things, or animations, 3D, text, etc., etc. And that's those 6 families you have are comp items, TOP, chop, SOP, MAT, DAT, and custom. And so let's just go over what each of those means very quickly. Sorry, I'm just moving up my little short list here so I get this all right for you, okay? So the first thing we're going to talk about is TOPs. Those are known as texture operators. And those work with images and basically any images or video work. These are going to be able to adjust them with a texture operator that's added to it. A CHOP, a CHOP, are for motion, control signals, and audio. So if I click on that, you'll see they have all sorts of different things that can deal with audio and things that are in motion, right? Things that are using timelines, etc. Let's see. If I move on beyond that, we have SOPs. And SOPs are surface operators. They work with more polygons, 3D objects, 3D lines, surfaces, etc. We'll get to those down the road. They're a little bit more advanced. MAT, and we're dealing with material operators, and these are textures and shading for 3D objects. So you might recognize some of these things if you've ever worked in Maya or any of the 3D classes. Then we have DATs. These are data operators. So these can really create some complex coding elements into your scene. You're actually going to see some coding language stuff in here. There's XML. There's all sorts of different fun stuff that you can work with inside of here, little operators that can be brought in. And then we have custom ones, which you can add down the road. And then the last thing I like to bring up are the comp. And so comps are, there's these, basically you have, how do I describe comps for you? So I guess the best way to describe a comp is just that these are different categories of components. It's just short for components. But there's buttons, there's sliders, there's little tables and widgets and geometry forms, and there's just a whole bunch of stuff in here, and they're broken up into these different categories of 3D objects, panels, others, and dynamics. We'll get to this down the road, but you are going to use comps quite a bit. And so let's go back to TOPs though. And you know what? At this point, I'm going to open up another file for you because I just want to kind of you to see how we can start to play with some different things. Okay. So, actually, you know what? I think, we'll just stay in this panel for right now. I'm going to go ahead and close this window. I'm going to delete a few things, though, okay? So, no, you know what? I'll leave it how it is for right now. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. In case you're wondering what this one is, the one that has like a vertical connection going, that's a parent-child relationship going on. So basically the noise is going to this chop to one item, which is then going into one of the channels of display. So it's not the same as like a left to right input output. This is more of a parent-child relationship, and you're going to see some items like that that work along the way and allow us to do some fun stuff and change some things up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just I'm going to go ahead and just start a new project. So I want to show you how to create a project file. It's one of the first things I want to do. So I'm going to go to File, New, and oh, wrong tab, for Touch Designer File, and I'm going to create a project folder. And it's important to create a project folder. This will contain all of your items that go into your Touch Designer setup. So I'm going to hit this folder here. I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to go ahead and create. I'm going to go ahead and open the desktop. That's where I want to save everything to. So that's fine. And I'm going to go ahead and create audio, movies. I'm going to call this new test project 2. And I'm going to create folders for images, geometry, channels, the works. Everything in there I'm going to go ahead and check on. All right. And just to double check that, I wanted to make sure I actually put this in the right spot. There you go. I'm going to go ahead and create a folder here. And let's call this Touch Designer Project 1 and create. And open that. There we go. Now we have an actual folder, and now we'll create. And then I'm going to save. So that just created inside that new test project 2 folder. I have an audio folder, a channel folder, a geometry, images, movies. It's where I'm going to kind of organize everything. And then outside of those folders, here's where I'm going to actually put my Touch Designer file. So let's call this Touch Designer Test 2 and save. Okay. And now you'll see, here we go. I have the test 2 file there. I have a 2.1 version, so it's got the first one and then a new version of that. I've got a folder for any movie images, things like that, just so they always show up in the same place. Because when you turn in your files, I'm going to ask you to zip this main folder, the new test project, whatever you name it, and go ahead and zip that and turn that in, okay? And I could have really called this one out here just like all of my Touch Designer projects, but whatever. I'm just trying to rename it here real quick, so I'll just call this like Touch Designer Projects. Okay, cool. So that'll get us going. I had a test project I created, so I'll drag that into there too. So now I have like 2 different projects. I've got test project 2 that I just created with you, and then this test project, right? So let's take a look at what I have. I'm going to go ahead and open up this test project 2. Let's see which one was the newer one. 430. Yeah, that one's the newest one. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. And I'm going to close this. That is kind of a weird thing, is it reopens Touch. It doesn't just like open 2 files at the same time. It's like it opens up. You have to wait for Touch Designer to load again when you do it. So I have created a really simple setup here. I loaded a movie file in. I added what's called a level item, an edge item, and then a movie file out. So how did I do this, right? Well, let's go ahead and do one. So I'm going to go ahead and double click. And under TOP, one of the main texture operators in the 6 families that we were talking about, I'm just going to stick with TOPs for right now. So movie file in is right here. You can always like just look for it by typing it, like movie file. You can search right up here in the search bar, movie file in, and it'll be the only one that's highlighted in white, right? So I can click on that, and then I can place it wherever I want. So there's my movie file in. By default, it just has this banana image. And then I'm going to go back. I'm going to hit tab again, and I'm going to bring in a level 1. So I'm just going to bring in level. This time, this one will be called level 2, right? There's nothing in it yet, so it's got the little warning symbol. I'm going to hit tab. I'm going to bring in an edge item. So edge is right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in a movie file out. A movie file out will allow me to save this as a movie file afterwards, okay? I'm going to select all these original ones that I had here. I'm just doing a right-click drag and delete. So right off the bat, I can start to connect these. So I'm going to go ahead and drag one connection from the movie file into the level 2. Now you see I actually have a level 2 here. What does levels do? Levels, well, I can adjust how dark that image is, the brightness of that image, the gamma of it, which is sort of like its color shifting, and the contrast. So I can make that a way more like contrasty image. And then I'll drag my level 2 into this edge item. Edge item like basically just highlights the edges and gets rid of a lot of the color on it. So I can increase the strength on that. There's a lot you can do here, the black level or the white level on it. You can play with luminance or just one of the color channels. It's a simple one, but it's a really kind of just fun, effective one. I get just the alpha edge outline, averages, all sorts of fun stuff. I'll go back to the red channel. I think that one looks kind of cool. Oops, sorry, I was moving my window there for you. And last but not least, I'll take the edge into the movie file out, right? Now the movie file out isn't showing anything, that's fine. And then I'm going to show you how to go ahead and change what movie is in there right now. So right now it's just this applications touch designer file. If I click this plus sign, it'll ask me where I want to grab my movie file from on my computer. So I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to grab one of those past student projects that I think I had shown you guys from another class. So let's see here. No, students, UNC. Give me a second here. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this one. This is like a video that one of the students shot of this like floating head that he had done some like video mapping on. So you can see it's a shot with an iPhone or a smartphone. It's a vertical kind of video. Okay, so I'm going to bring that in. And now it's playing. You can see that Touch Designer has like a pause control down here at the bottom. Play. I could always pause it and then start it back up. Or I could pause it and send it back to the beginning. It'll just loop unless you just have it play once. So it's up to you with these buttons here what you want to do. Right now it's playing at 60 frames per second. It's just showing you kind of the frame rate that it's working with. All right, so you can see right off the bat that this green video now has been turned into this sort of like ghostly image. You know, I could increase the strength on that and kind of how ghosted I want it to be. I can play with the black level. I'm going to actually bring that down so it shows up a little bit more. I'm going to hit H on that, Shift H, just so I can kind of zoom in on it and really see the details. Really kind of cool how that edge work is filtering it. So that's that perfect example of how these texture operators are working with a video file. It's creating this whole kind of like edged texture surface to it, right? So I'm going to hit H to see everything again. Now, last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this movie file out, and I have to set a few things here. So what do I want to save? This is going to allow me to save whatever I created in Touch Designer as a movie file, as an image sequence, stop frame. I'm going to choose movie. As far as the codec goes, I could choose any of these that I want. Photo, motion, JPEG on a Mac would be like an MOV file. For MPEG-4, that's pretty standard, so I'm going to do it with an MP4. And then I have to, I want to basically, I have to set the name here and where it's going to save. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to call this edge animation test.mp4. Make sure to put in that .mp4. And beyond that, there's some codec stuff like on the audio. Do I want this to be lossless? MP3 is fine. I'll up the audio to like 320. If there's no audio in your file, you don't need to. My movie file audio is already up to 30 frames per second. I can set the frame rate. And now all I do is I hit record. And you can see now it's actually recording into that movie out. And actually there it is on my desktop. This is this little edge animation being created right now while it loops over and over. Whenever I want to stop, I could stop it because I know it only was about 10 seconds long and then it looped back again. So whenever I'm ready, there's a pause as well, and then you can get it going again to make some changes and then start it back up again. But I'm going to go ahead and hit off. That finalized the file. If I look at the file on my desktop, I now have my edge animation version of that movie file. I could throw this into my projector and start projecting outdoors and having some fun with it. So this is just a great example of how you can create content in Touch Designer Down the road, I'm also going to show you how to map with Touch Designer, but this is just a great example of how you can create some really unique uh, generated imagery, content, etc. with Touch Designer. All right, I'm going to close that. I could put anything I want inside of these. I could come into here and hit tab, and I could bring in, maybe something else to mess with instead of just I could bring in a emboss item, right? And I could disconnect and move that over, and move that over, and bring that in between, and drag an input there, and then an input into that. Now I have an emboss item as well that I could bring in and modify my imagery even more with this sort of like strange three-dimensional embossing. And I could play with the direction of that emboss. If I want to zoom in on it, hit Shift H, and you can kind of see how that plays with it. Just bringing up the strength, trying to increase it a little bit. I might have to go to my levels here and increase the contrast, brightness. There we go. Now I'm getting a more powerful image that's coming out of it. So all sorts of different fun stuff that you can work with here. Get it right where you want it. You can see how it's changing my edge input over there on the right. So for just getting started, that should help you with how to get some content in, how to get it back out, and then how to start playing with adjusting that image in between. And like I said, this is just working with texture operators. We're going to add a lot more in. Definitely check out the homework assignment I gave you. They're going to go over a lot more of what Touch Designer can do. And yeah, just get in touch if you have any questions. And welcome to Touch Designer. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.